Week 17, the fantasy championships have arrived, and you are watching a waiver show, which means you either have way too much time on your hands or far too many holes in your roster to go win a championship. Hopefully, we have some great picks for you. I feel like the waivers are not too bad for week 17, mainly because people stopped paying attention 2 weeks ago. So they've left some pretty decent players out there for you. I like some of the options. I think we can help you win a championship here. And apparently it's Christmas as well. So, we'll get to that. Let's get into the show. What is up? Welcome to WireTapped, Club Fantasy's weekly waiver wire show, the last edition of the 2024 season as we get you ready for championship waivers, week 17. This is all of it. If you play in week 18, we're here to support you. You can find us on Twitter, but there ain't going to be no show. I'm Ryan Weisse, the host. With me, as always, Josh Hudson. Josh, how many championships are you in? How are you looking?
I only made 2.
I only made 2.
In that. Very disappointed, especially because the 2 dynasty leagues where I feel like I have built absolute stacked rosters got toppled, even though I've had the second most points scored amongst the final 4.
Yeah,
which is the bad draw. But
yeah, I'm in one of those.
Running into Jonathan
leagues.
Taylor, it is what it is.
I'd say I'm in one of those dynasty leagues, and it's 4 versus 6 in the championship. So.
I feel like semifinals need to be like best ball, right? Just take the top 2 scorers in the week and just move them on.
I'm going to disagree because I don't think I would have made it otherwise. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. That one, and then I made it to the football guys staff league. I'm in the championship against our good friend Julia Hapworth. So
very cool.
Yeah, Julia's.
I'm going to root for my pulling at my heartstrings here.
I'll root for Julia. She needs the help. She has had the best record in the league all season long, but points wise, she's like 5th in points. I've been leading in points basically all season long. I have 5 high scores this season, and yet I finished 3rd, I think. And no, I did. I got the bye. I apologize. I did finish 2nd. So it's 1 versus 2 in that championship, me versus Julia. So it should be a fun one. But I do love that while the Club Fantasy Dynasty I'm in, it's not Club Fantasy Writers, but the 2 championships I'm in are in a Football Guys Championship and a Club Fantasy Championship. So
there you go.
I'll take it where my allegiance always seems to lie. Guys, before we get into the actual show, I'll remind you it's championship week. So if you guys have not got a trophy yet, it is time to use the link in the description of this video. Use promo code WOFF over at Trophy Smack. Get something cool for your league winner. Get something cool for your league loser. If you feel like you got screwed over, get something cool for yourself. But no matter what you decide, use our link in the promo. This benefits our partnership with Women of Fantasy Football, our sister site. We just got our Super Bowl credentials, so we are going to be able to send folks to the Super Bowl yet again this year. Every year we've said, hey, we can get you in, but you got to take care of everything else. So any money we make off of this partnership is going to go back to those ladies that we are sending to the Super Bowl so we can at least help them out a little bit financially. And like I said, they got a ton of cool stuff. Me and Josh both have championship belts. I have my Christmas background, so I can't show you right now. I'm not putting Josh on the spot, but the long and short of it is a lot of cool shit at Trophy Smack. Championships are here. If you order now, my guess is if you're going to have any sort of like trophy or ring ceremony in the next like 3 weeks, you'll probably get it in time. So make sure you guys check that out. Make sure you use our promo code. Josh, actually, let's start with the chat because everybody's lamenting over yesterday. So we start with Caesar. He needed Jacobs and Reed under 36 points. They scored 31. Caesar's in the championship. Yesterday on the show, I thought I didn't need Jacobs. Turns out I did. But the Packers defense held me down in 2 leagues. Packers defense is why I'm in the championship in both of those leagues, by the way.
There you go. I mean,
stream of the week, baby.
Week 16,
stream of the week.
Week 16, you get the very first NFL shutout. They are the only defense that has held an opposing offense scoreless this season. It took 16 weeks to do it.
And they were the stream of the week, baby.
There you go. How many points did they end up with? Just like standard scoring? I didn't even check.
I have not looked at standard scoring.
I know they got like the 10 default. So
Yeah, here, let's look. Because none of my leagues are standard scoring, but my guess is that should have been an 18-point week. It'll take me 2 seconds.
17 according to fantasy data, which still was defense 3 on the week.
Oh wow, that's
Falcons Bengals, which were 2 that
touchdowns.
We got quite a bit of questions. So
yeah, Falcons with those touchdowns, Bengals with the sacks. So yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Caesar made it to 8 championships out of 14 leagues in all 5 of his money leagues. What a week!
That is awesome.
We got George made it to the championship. If Hurts is out, is he going to go Tua or Richardson for his? He has to go Tua and Richardson for his 2 QBs. Should he pick up Mason Rudolph versus the Jags? He doesn't really like Tua versus the Browns. This is a tough one because they're basically the same player this week, Mason and Tua, which is hilarious.
I don't think it's that tough. I really don't. You're going to tell me that you feel comfortable starting Mason Rudolph in a championship over Tua Tagovailoa?
I think he has a better chance to score touchdowns, but no, I'm going to go Tua Tagovailoa. So
I don't even think that Titans offense looks bad. I mean, they put up 30 on the Colts, but the Colts defense is not good.
Yeah. I just worry about Miami and the weather. So,
I mean, I get that, but like Tua, the last time he was in cold weather, threw over 300 yards.
There you go.
Throwing it is not the problem. And anytime, like, you can have a good defense, but when the offense can't score points, it wears the defense down.
I'll beg to differ. Throwing it is always the problem for Tua but that's a whole story for another day. I still personally don't think Hurts is going to miss this game, Josh. So I think,
I don't think he is either.
Yeah, he's going to be able to start Hurts.
Hoping he doesn't miss this.
Yeah,
game.
certainly as an Eagles fan. George also wants to know McMillan on waivers. He's going to add him, but would we play him over Reed, Jennings, or Kupp? I'd play him over all 3.
As of right now, yes.
Yeah, go get him.
Certainly over Kupp at this point.
I was just gonna say, who would he bench out of this group, Josh? Because I think it's close between Kupp and Jennings. I'll start Reed. I understand.
I was gonna say Jennings is the safest one in my opinion. Like the target share is still there. I think it's over the last 6 weeks. He's only top 10 fantasy points 3 times. So like the targets are there. They're just not translating. But for everybody else, the targets aren't there.
Yeah.
Aiden Reed, I don't think has had a good week in like 7 weeks. Like an actual fantasy startable week since probably Thanksgiving when he had 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. And then George ends with, he's going to add Chiggy. Does he start him over Jonnu? I think you stick with Jonnu, right?
You 1,000% stick with Jonnu.
Yeah. Chig is if you don't have one of the top options. Jonnu right now, my rankings are still in their early stage, is my tight end 5 for the week. 62 yards last week. Browns aren't great against the tight end. I think Jonnu's a nice, safe play this week. Get Chig to block if your other person is dealing with issues at tight end. But if the other person has like Kelsey or McBride and they're not going to go Chiggy, don't even waste the waiver claim. Start Jonnu and be done with it.
I think you meant Bowers or McBride. If they have Kelsey, you want to pick up Chig because
they're not
want them to play Kelsey.
I do mean, I was going to say they're not going to play Kelsey though. Or they're not going to bench Kelsey though. Nobody's going to bench Kelsey in their championship. Should they?
Honestly,
Should they? Yes. Are they? No. And then Caesar says, can we trust Brenton Strange this week? Trust is a tough word. He hasn't looked to see who's on waivers yet. Right now, Josh, in my very initial rankings, Brenton Strange is my tight end 19. So I would call him very untrustable.
You were so high on him last week, and you said one bad week. Fuck this guy.
Yeah, if you can't beat the worst defense against tight ends, I'm done with you, bro. Like plain and simple. There's a chance he's going to move up, obviously, but I'll tell 2 names right now. Chig Okonkwo is my number 1 waiver ad, Josh, and Dalton Schultz. Houston has no wide receivers against Baltimore, and they cannot cover the tight end. So those are 2 guys that I'm going to be looking for in this situation.
Yeah, Schultz should very easily be a top 7 option this week.
Yep. George, I see your question. We're going to move on just a bit. We're not going to miss any questions, so do not worry about that whatsoever. Since you guys kind of already got into this, my top 5 waiver ads for the week, I decided to be a little bit more balanced this week because of the situation. So I gave you 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 quarterback. These would be my priorities as we go into the week. However, there's a caveat in the article already. So at running back, when you're looking at waivers, I'm only looking at guys that are available in 50% of leagues. We're going Audric Estime and Gus Edwards. There are issues here for both of these running backs. If Jaleel McLaughlin's back, Estime loses some shine. If J.K. Dobbins is back, Gus Edwards is unplayable. So you're going to need to monitor practice reports, but these are the guys I would go in if I had a need at running back. At wide receiver, Jalen McMillan, Kayshon Boutte. McMillan is obviously a major part of a Tampa Bay offense that you want a piece of. Boutte, on the other hand, he's been hit or miss, but just had his best game as a pro last week. These are the guys I'm prioritizing at wide receiver. At tight end, it's Chig Okonkwo. Great matchup against Jacksonville. And my bonus pick, I went with the quarterback. And you know what, Josh? I'm going to tell you guys right now it's Bryce Young, but Bryce Young is going to come up again when we talk about the quarterbacks, because even in my article, I poured water on Bryce Young because I like Bryce Young. I don't know what his ceiling is. And there are some interesting quarterback plays this week. Quarterback might be the most interesting position on waivers this week. So Josh, let's talk about Bryce Young a little bit later. Let's start with these running backs, because I right away in the article pour water on Gus Edwards because they activated Dobbins. I don't think he's going to play, but if he does, Gus Edwards is unplayable. Do you have similar thoughts about Audric Estime with Jaleel McLaughlin?
Yeah, 100%. It's still a three-headed backfield. You know, the way that we saw the split last week on Thursday night against the Chargers without Jaleel McLaughlin, Estime handled a good amount. Like, I think it was only like 40-something%. Like, they worked in Blake Watson. They worked in Javonte Williams. Williams kind of slid into that McLaughlin pass catching role. He had like 11 targets, only had like 20-something yards. But, hey, it was a great PPR day. Yeah. So if McLaughlin's back, obviously I think that sends Blake Watson to the practice squad. But you're still working with Estime, Williams, and McLaughlin, right? McLaughlin's the guy that has the juice.
Yeah.
They're going to keep him on the field. Estime just feels extremely risky. Yeah. And if I recall correctly, he didn't do a whole lot even this past week.
He wasn't bad. 9 carries for 48 yards and a touchdown. So
that's right. He did fall in the end zone. Okay.
Yep. So that's the interesting thing.
But again, you take away that passing down usage, that's barely an RB2.
100%.
Yeah.
Now, what I will say is Jerome Ford would have been the easy pick, but he's only available in 40% of leagues. So there are going to be a ton of people who tell you go get Jerome Ford. I go on the estimation he's probably not available.
We told you to pick him up last week.
Yeah, if he was, go get Jerome Ford. The other issue, Josh, I'm kind of jumping the gun again here. Tyjae Spears. I probably should have included him, but he's been so inefficient. He just can't stop scoring touchdowns. So what I will tell you is if Tyjae Spears is available, he is less risky than these other two just because he's not losing his job this week, and that's for sure. So
correct. And, you know, Pollard's dealing with the ankle injury. With their season kind of where it's at, it would make a lot of sense for Tennessee to be like, dude, just take a back seat. Let's get healthy for next year when we get a new quarterback and figure out this offense, et cetera, et cetera. Tyjae Spears hasn't done a whole lot this season. He needs the reps at this point because he's been dealing with his own injuries, and now he's healthy. And we're seeing why we were excited about him heading into this season. He's a good young player. He's got some juice. He's fun to watch in the passing game. My biggest issue with him is that if you take away those touchdowns, which again, he scored 4 in 2 weeks, and I'm not trying to take that away from him.
But if you do,
the usage hasn't been there.
No,
it's been very middling. But he's involved in the passing game. He's like, for all of the first 14 weeks when we were excited about Tony Pollard because he hadn't seen less than a 10% target share in games, all that passing work right now is going towards Tyjae Spears. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So now you add the touchdowns onto that. That's what makes him exciting. Now, if they shut down Tony Pollard or just say, you know, he's going to be questionable all week heading into this game, I'm not falling for that again. If he's questionable all week heading into this game, dial the fuck up Tyjae Spears. Let's go.
Yeah, but I was gonna say Tony Pollard is playing, so just let's throw that out there as well. But like I said, if all things remained equal, Jaleel McLaughlin's out, J.K. Dobbins is out, I would lean Estime and Gus Edwards because of their matchups. I do want to let you guys know we see the questions in the chat. Chris Bird, I think you're a new name. We answer questions after every segment, so you are not going to wait long for an answer. Just bear with us a few more moments. Josh, when we look at the wide receivers, it's a tale of two stories, if you will. I guess maybe the same story. Jalen McMillan has come on as of late. 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games. We were waiting for someone to step into that number 2 role in Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is throwing the ball a ton, and McMillan seems to have that role now.
Yeah, 100%. He's a wide receiver 20 since week 13.
Yeah.
You know, dealt with some injuries earlier in the season. Our guy Gator J was really high on McMillan coming out this season. Honestly, there was a lot of talk that if McMillan had been fully healthy in 2023, we might be talking about him the same way that we were talking about Roma Dunze.
Wow.
And certainly a lot more than we were talking about Jalen Polk, who ended up going to the Patriots in the second round over McMillan, who was the third round pick to the Bucs.
Yep.
So like he wasn't getting as much love as the other two Washington Huskies. McMillan may have been just as talented as Dunze, if not more talented, just again with the injuries. So Bucs probably got themselves a steal. Now he's making the case that he's a perfect complement for Mike Evans, who we all hoped would do something on Sunday night against Dallas. Kind of got bottled up. Guess who scores the touchdown? Oh, wait, Jalen McMillan. Like you said, 4 touchdowns
almost the
the
second.
last 3 weeks.
Almost the second. That game-winning interception was to McMillan again. So.
Yep, 100%. Like they're looking for him in the red zone. This is where you score fantasy points.
Yep.
Like I know I just got done saying, if you take away the touchdowns with Tyjae Spears, the other side of the production isn't really there for Spears. It is for McMillan. The targets are there, the catches, the receiving yards, all that is there. Now you add the touchdowns. That makes him a very interesting flex play this week, regardless of the opponent, because Tampa is throwing the football. Baker has never been afraid to throw the football.
Yep. Read the article for the other guys. We're going to talk more about Bryce Young later. Chigakonkwo, I'll just say 21 targets since Mason Rudolph took over last week. So I think he's super interesting on volume alone. Josh, let's knock out the chat. George wants to know if we like Garendo or Ford better in that RB2 spot. Just doesn't see a world where they play James Conner, which I completely agree with. And it's so hard to trust any of those backups at this point. So would we start? Okay, so let's start with Garendo or Ford.
It feels like the answer should be Ford, given how well he's played the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Miami's run defense has actually been really good.
Yeah.
That does worry me a little bit.
Just shut the 49ers down.
What's up?
They just shut the 49ers down.
Yeah, so. But they shut down like the RB7 on the depth chart. Let's be real here. 49ers do play Detroit. Detroit's run defense has been good this season, but that defense as a whole has taken a lot of hits. And it's in San Francisco. I think I would feel a little bit more comfortable with Garendo if he plays, if he gets a clean bill of health. And by that, I mean not questionable every single day leading up to this week. Otherwise, I'm going to lean on Ford and just take the volume and hope he falls in the end zone. Or the long run.
The Browns are giving him every touch. So
correct. Yeah.
Plus the receptions with DTR at quarterback. We talked a lot about that yesterday. So.
Yeah. He had 5 catches?
Yep. So then Josh, let's say Garendo's healthy. Would we start Ford over Reed Cup Jennings? I think in this situation, I probably still go with the wide receivers. I know Cup's just been untrustable.
Yeah, I would start Ford over Reed and Cup.
Oh, wow.
Look, I can't trust Jade.
Go with the guaranteed volume. I mean, honestly, we got trapped by the guaranteed volume last week because Ford was great with guaranteed volume. So
exactly. So I'm not. I mean, we had a lot of, Kendre Miller over Jerome Ford because of the one pop week, and then, Alvin Kamara being out. And, anytime you're dealing with a young quarterback, like, Ford's with DTR, Miller dealing with Spencer Rattler, like, you expect them to lean on the running games to take the ball out of the young player's hands. Ford got that volume. Miller did not. And that's the long and short of it, right? Jaden Reed has had, I feel like, every opportunity to do something to show fantasy managers that he can be reliable. He can't. It's just not possible in that Green Bay Packers pass.
Not in this offense. Josh Jacobs are bust is really what it comes
pretty much, yeah. Like you'll get these, pop weeks with Tucker Kraft. Dontavian Wick scores a touchdown, but has 2 catches for 13 yards.
Exactly.
Like Christian Watson goes down in the second half, but has 2 catches for 40-something yards. Like that's what this passing offense is right now.
Yep.
The only piece of that Packers team that you really want, that you feel comfortable with week in and week out, is Josh Jacobs, and Tucker Kraft is a distant second.
Yep. Scamper stumbled and bumbled his way into the finals. He's a heavy dog. He's staring down Burrow versus Denver, and that would be a stack with Jamar, or Purdy with the better matchup against Detroit. I'm not playing better matchup over a better player in this situation at all.
Yeah, I'm not.
It's Burrow 100 times out of 100.
Yeah, Exactly. Plain and simple. You're not sitting Joe Burrow.
No, especially not for Brock Purdy, man. Like, I understand it's a
like,
better matchup.
I get that too, and it is at home, but that San Francisco offense just looks awful.
Yeah.
It really does. Like, I mean, I just kind of look at it this way. If Birdie comes out, throws 3 bills and 2 touchdowns, congratulate and move on. Like, you would feel like absolute shit if you sat Joe Burrow and he gets you 20 points.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even care if Brock Purdy goes for like 25. If Burrow throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions against Denver, you're gonna kick yourself for not.
I mean, certainly the floor plays to Joe Burrow. The floor for 100%. Purdy is like 5 fantasy points.
He's so depleted of weapons, and we finally got a good Debo game. That just tells me Debo's gonna have like 3 catches for 10 yards and 2 fumbles next week.
Yeah,
because Brian Branch is gonna be all over him.
All right, Josh. Defense question. Which defense would we start? Denver, Chicago, or Jacksonville? And these are defenses I was moving around a lot in my rankings this week, Josh. Chicago has really turned the wrong corner on defense for fantasy purposes. So I had to move them way down my rankings. Denver is a great defense, but I moved them way down my rankings because they're playing Cincinnati. However, I still have them all ahead of Jacksonville because Jacksonville is a completely ass defense, even against Tennessee. I'm going to be honest, Chris, I don't like one of these defenses this week. If I had to play from this list, Josh, this is fucking nuts, but I'm going to go with Denver just because I know Joe Burrow will turn the ball over and I know Joe Burrow will get sacked. So I'm going to go with Denver. But Chris, when I look at the rankings, the guys who are on waivers right now, Chargers are out there in 50% of leagues. Bills are out there in 50% of leagues. Colts are out there in 50% of leagues. Those are all top 5 defenses for me, Josh. I would play all 3 of them over all 3 of these. So
I agree wholeheartedly with you. Mostly because I don't pay that much attention to defenses. But I mean, let's talk Jacksonville really quick. We saw with Tennessee last week playing a subpar defense in Indianapolis, they scored 30 points. Just because you're going against a not great quarterback doesn't mean a bad defense can take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Jacksonville is not a good defense.
They are not.
They should not be a consideration here in my opinion.
Nope. They're not even in my top 25. Hold on. Where do I have them? They are 24th. So yes, Jacksonville.
I was so waiting for you to say that.
Jacksonville is barely a play in 2 defense leagues, folks. We're not playing the Jacksonville Jaguars this week. Josh Scampers wants to know Amir Abdullah or Gus Edwards. And I think, Josh, this is going to come down for me on whether or not, and I'm just going to go ahead and throw Georgia. Is Dobbins being activated from the IR? So Dobbins practice window is open.
Dobbins is activated, correct?
Practice window is open.
Okay.
Not fully activated yet. They'll activate. They play Sunday. So they'll activate on Saturday if they're going to activate. So for me, this all comes down to you want both of these guys.
They play Saturday.
Oh, they do play Saturday. So they have to activate on Friday.
They got this 1:00 game on Saturday.
Okay, so they have to activate on Friday. You want both of these guys on your roster. If Dobbins is out, I'm playing Gus. If Dobbins is in, I'm playing Abdullah.
I could not have said it better.
All right. George has to watch his opponent's quarterbacks play each other tomorrow. Mahomes versus Russell Wilson. He said he could be feeling great going into the weekend. However, the opponent also has Gibbs on Monday night, so it's going to be a sweat fest. Josh, I am not in love with this Steelers-Chiefs game tomorrow. I think this could work out really, really well for George.
I think it's going to be a really ugly game. I mean, it's 2 teams that rely on defense. They're saying that Pickens should be back. And he's had, 3.5 weeks off, it feels like, with a hamstring. The Chiefs' offense seems to be clicking.
Yep.
But it's a short week. Mahomes is banged up. Steelers have a good defense. Steelers are at home. Chiefs also play really good defense. This feels like a 16-13 game to me.
Yeah, I said.
I know the over-under is like 43.5. But, I don't know. I don't.
It feels ugly.
It feels ugly to me. It really does.
Yeah, what's funny is you would have thought we had been excited for this game, but all of a sudden Patrick Mahomes a little banged up and it's an ugly one. LaPla has another defense question. Miami or stick with Buffalo? I understand the hype around Miami, but this is another situation, Josh, where it's a not very good defense taking on a bad offense. Whereas Buffalo, while they've had misses, do not get me wrong, they've had misses. this is a pretty good defense taking on a pretty bad offense. I'm going to take Buffalo taking on the Jets instead of Miami on Cleveland.
Yeah, I would as well. I mean, I get the concept, you know, Dolphins playing DTR.
Oh, 100%.
Good quarterback. You know, Dolphins pass rush feels really depleted. I know Chop Robinson is kind of starting to pick things up a little bit.
Yeah, he looked good 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think he's got 6 sacks on the season, which, you know, for a rookie, not too bad. But I don't feel like the Dolphins are creating very many turnovers.
They don't feel opportunistic at all.
They're not at all. And that's the thing. If there's any week to be opportunistic, it's this one against a bad quarterback.
Yeah. But the problem is they're only going to get 7 opportunities at interception. So.
Well, this is true. Yeah. I think you kind of have to roll with the Bills here. I mean, they're just a better defense overall.
Yep, and it's not like Miami can't put up a dud. I know Buffalo's been interesting over the last few weeks, but Miami could do the same thing. Austin made it to 2 championships. Congratulations, buddy.
Baby.
Love to see it. Josh, we have some differing opinions on this one between me and you. I would call Hollywood Brown a sneaky waiver ad, but I remember you wrote in your notes, no thank you.
Yeah, I want nothing to do with Hollywood. I think he ran like 33% route participation. He's still getting worked into the offense. Could it grow? 100% it could. I'll take you back to when Kansas City acquired DeAndre Hopkins. How many weeks did it take for him to fully get integrated into
3-4 weeks? And technically
it took 3-4 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not worrying about this right now. It feels to me that, you know, as they work him in, they're relying on the individual who's been in this offense quite a bit, and that's Xavier Worthy.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about it on yesterday's recap show. 11 targets in back-to-back games. He's putting together a high-quality rookie season that is in comparison to what Tyreek Hill did in his rookie season. And I feel like that they want to use both of them very similarly.
Yep.
So Hollywood's there to help stretch the defense because of his speed. I've never really thought he was a great wide receiver to begin with. But again, he can stretch the field so that they can use Hollywood in a lot of, or not Hollywood, but Xavier Worthy in a lot of these jet sweeps, you know,
it may not be a coincidence that Hollywood gets back and Worthy has probably one of his most inclusive games of the season.
Yeah, because you have somebody that makes the defense go back to, you know, do more of those shell coverages and pull them further off the line of scrimmage.
Yeah. Austin, I see your quarterback question. That's literally our entire waiver section on quarterback. So I'm going to ask you to wait because we're essentially going to answer your question for that entire section. So bear with us on that one. I'm just going to quickly chime in here. I have these guys at 3 and 4, Josh. I have the Bills at 3, the Colts at 4. Bills get the Jets, Colts get the Giants. Bills are a little bit better defense than the Colts. So that's why I'm kind of leaning the Bills right now. I could easily see myself pivoting on this one before the week is set in stone though.
I was going to say Drew Lock's dealing with yet another injury. We might be getting another Tommy DeVito week.
You know what? I'm pivoting right. I'm pivoting right now. I just moved the Colts to 3. So the answer is the Colts. Like I'm thinking about it and I'm like, if I had both of these defenses, I would play the Colts.
Because there's no way Tommy DeVito is scoring 30 points on the Colts. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah. We could see Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams all of a sudden remember they love one another against the Bills. That's not happening against the Giants, plain and simple. Fang, new face, I believe. Thanks for tuning in. Got the garbage time save from Jordan Reed, won the game by 2 points.
Jaden Reed. You're really on this Jordan Reed mind.
This is how far Jaden Reed has followed. At one point this preseason, he was my wide receiver 8, and I was catching so much shit for it. He was my favorite player in the NFL, and now I hate him and can't even call him by his real name. So I wish
the ultimate sign of disrespect.
I wish it was Jordan Reed. Mr. Grapefruit's going to pick up Chiggy in a league. I think it's a good pickup. When I was looking at these tight end roster ships, the guys who are out there in 50% or more leagues, Chiggy's the only one I trust at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I'm still fine with Brenton Strange this week. I think it's a pretty decent matchup.
Yeah.
But I mean, I get it. The thing with tight ends, you have to catch them on hot streaks, plain and simple.
100%.
If you don't catch them on hot streaks, they're going to burn you. That's just kind of where I'm at with tight ends that aren't named Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, George Kittle, and Jonnu Smith right now. And David Njoku. I'll throw that name in there.
George, I'm going to make you wait a little bit. So you're my other 2 questions before we get into quarterbacks. So as we always do, we like to take it back and see what we learned the previous week for the last time this season. What did we learn in week 16 to help us make some of our decisions in week 17? Josh, get us started.
Remember when I said that David Njoku was a bona fide starting tight end in fantasy?
Yeah, you were
saying it all season.
Well, even if you weren't saying it all season, you were beating that drum louder in week 16 than I think anybody else was. You were far more confident than the average fantasy analyst that David Njoku was still a play with DTR. So congrats, buddy.
So I pulled this stat from Ryan Heath's stats recap that he puts on Twitter. 5 career games David Njoku has with DTR. Njoku averages 11 targets per game and scores 14.7 fantasy points per game.
Yeah.
I mean, you can talk all the time about when backup quarterbacks come in, they don't help, prop up the weapons that we want them to prop up. I mean, just look at how bad Elijah Moore and Jerry Jeudy fell off, right? DTR is not throwing down the field. Where do tight ends typically work? In between the 10s.
100%.
Right? 0 to 10 yards from the line of scrimmage. Njoku is athletic enough that he can get downfield, but this is where he lives, and this is where DTR is going to look. That is his reliable target. David Njoku is going to be that staple in your championship lineup. That is the set it and forget it, that I can get 10 to 15 fantasy points from a position that has ebbs and flows like the stock market. Take what you get from Njoku and be happy about it.
Yeah, except guaranteed volume at tight end. That's definitely something I would preach as well. Josh, for mine, I'm gonna say something we were talking about a little bit about yesterday. Father Time is undefeated, and it has come for the Los Angeles Rams. And I understand they are winning their division. More on that in a second. But over the last 2 weeks, 37-year-old Matthew Stafford in 2 games has 270 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 pick. He also had -4 rushing yards this past week. Now, obviously, Stafford was really good against Buffalo in week 14, 320 yards and 2 touchdowns. And guess what? The week before that, 2 more touchdowns, but only 183 yards. And as I start to look at his games, Josh, while he got really hot for a 3-week period, he seems to find it in spurts. He had 154 yards against the Raiders. Before that, he hadn't had a 300-yard game since week 1. Like, he has been so hit or miss this season. And the fact now that we're also seeing it affect Cooper Kupp. We see Tyler Higbee come back. He catches 1 singular ball. The Rams are being carried by their defense. It certainly isn't something on offense. I kind of feel bad for Kyron Williams at this point, but at least he found the end zone this week.
Yeah, that NFC West is so bad.
Which brings me, I'm going to
steal my next point. But here's the thing. I will say, I was shitting on Geno Smith hard this week. And he came out and threw 3 touchdown passes. That
2 more interceptions.
By far, his best offensive performance this season.
Yeah. So what I will say is I mentioned the Rams are going to win their division. So I'm going to jump ahead of Josh here and take my second point. The entire NFC West is in trouble. And I don't mean for 2024, I will be betting against whoever, or I will be betting for whoever the Rams are playing in week 1 of the playoffs. They're in trouble for the foreseeable future, Josh. When I look at these 4 teams, I can't look at one of them and be like, they're on the right track. Obviously, the Rams have gotten better on defense, but let's start with the 49ers. They lose to Miami this week. They're now last place in the division. You have a banged up Christian McCaffrey. You have a wide receiver room that is unhealthy and doesn't really fit your offense. You have an aging George Kittle. Your best offensive lineman is dealing with personal tragedies and injuries and is going to sit out the rest of the season. I don't like what I'm seeing from the 49ers. You move on to the Seahawks. They just lose to Minnesota this week, and you have to address the troubles at quarterback. Geno Smith, ton of passing volume, but has not been a good quarterback this season. He's had a couple of pop games, so nothing you can really be happy about. You certainly aren't happy about Sam Howell in the background. The Cardinals lose to the Carolina fucking Panthers, ending their own season, and then they can't find a way to get a top 5 tight end into the end zone or the best wide receiver in the draft. They don't even know how to use Marvin Harrison Jr. And then when I was looking at the stats, Josh, even though this division, again, the Rams lead it with 9 wins, only Arizona is positive scoring differential, and it's by 2 points. They're like 351 to 349. This entire division has allowed a ton of points, and none of them have scored more points than their opponent. Like, what an ugly fucking division.
So bad. It's so bad. And it's just hilarious to me because you have like the Rams who are just like, their offense is just veterans, right? Like, it's built on age with Stafford, Kupp. You have, the younger guys with Puka and Kieran Williams. Arizona should very easily be the best offense in this division. Plain and simple. They have the best running game. They have a hot shot, young wide receiver, by far the best tight end. Can't do anything else. You can argue they have the best quarterback too in Kyler. I say you can argue. Seattle, they did everything right in bringing in Ryan Grubb. I love this offense. Absolutely love it.
They have a rebuild they're going to have to do. So
they do. But the running backs can't stay healthy. Their offensive line is still a work in progress.
The running game is so inefficient.
And that's the other side of it. Correct. And Geno is just old at this point. He's showing why he was never given an opportunity to begin with to be a starting quarterback, but he's improved enough to be somewhat reliable in his advanced age.
Yeah, it's just this sounds so terrible, but the game's passing him by. I don't know if you need an old quarterback running an innovative college offense.
Well, and that's the other side. And this is what we talked about, with Aaron Rodgers for a while now. It's just been older quarterbacks. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, plain and simple.
Nope. They are who they are.
This is why they're struggling in today's NFL, because you need to be able to throw the football. Just like when pitchers get up there in age, their arm starts to fall off. What do quarterbacks use? They use their fucking arms.
Yep.
Older quarterbacks can't sling it the way that they used to.
Yeah.
They don't process these creative, innovative defenses the way that they used to. This is the hindrance that these teams that are relying on veteran quarterbacks are dealing with right now.
Which is a perfect segue into something else you learned in week 16.
Yeah, but before we get into that, I want to bring this up from George, because this clearly was my point before. Yes, David Njoku did suffer a bit of a knee injury in week 16. The severity of it is still unknown. He's undergoing tests. Do you want to doubt Chief David Njoku from playing in week 17? Because I sure as hell don't.
Do I need to remind you that
like the sculpture of David?
Yeah, do I need to remind you that he got caught on fire and still played last season?
Thank you. This man has the mentality of a hockey player.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Anyway, yes, my next point, because we're talking about older quarterbacks. Do not get on Aaron Rodgers' bad side. Okay? Since week 15, when Garrett Wilson said, I'm open when I'm one-on-one, throw the fucking fade. This man has seen 9 targets to Davante Adams 21.
Yeah.
If there is any lesson that Davante Adams can impart on a young Garrett Wilson, shut up and do your job, and Aaron Rodgers will find you. That is it. I just love how the preseason narrative was for really the last 2 years. Oh, Aaron Rodgers to Garrett Wilson to the moon.
Yep.
Aaron Rodgers is going to be what saves Garrett Wilson. It's been the complete opposite.
Yeah. There was a point in the season where it looked like everything was going to be okay, but
and then they go and get Davante Adams, and it all went to shit.
And losing brings out true colors as well. Nobody likes
truly
to lose.
Does. 100%. It truly does. There's been a lot of buzz that Garrett Wilson might request the trade in this offseason. I think the only way that actually happens is if, for some godforsaken reason, the Jets bring back Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen. But the Jets would be really fucking stupid if they don't consider trading Breece Hall.
Are the Jets on the hook to Adams, or is it a 1-year deal after the trade? Okay, I thought they were. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And that's going to be the other thing. Is like, if you don't bring back Aaron Rodgers, what do you do with Davante Adams? Because Davante Adams isn't going to play there if Aaron Rodgers isn't there.
Precisely.
So, yeah, the New York Jets offseason is going to be pure cinema. And as a film junkie, I cannot wait.
Yeah. Josh, I just wanted to give a great shout out to the rookie wide receiver class. Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver 3 this week. Jalen McMillan, the wide receiver 19. Ladd McConkey, the wide receiver 25. Malik Neighbors, the wide receiver 29. And even Roma Dunze cracked the top 50. This has been a very special class for rookie wide receivers. Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. has been a disappointment. But when you look at the season, Neighbors and BTJ are both top 10. You have 5 rookies in the top 50. And my original idea here was to say, look how bad the rookie running backs have been. There's actually 5 rookie running backs at the top 50 for running backs as well, Josh. But what I found interesting is they were not the top guys drafted. I believe Bucky Irving was the 5th or 6th running back drafted, and he's the top one of this class. Every one of these top 5 rookie running backs was drafted late in the 4th round or later. Bucky Irving was the 425, and every one of them was drafted after Bucky Irving. So,
I'm actually kind of curious on the positions there. Hang on, let me see. Oh, hang on. Let me see.
What are you?
Not pulling it up.
I say it's pretty fresh in my head. What are you curious on?
No, the order in which the running backs were taken, because I think
it was
Bucky
Brooks,
was like the 3rd.
Nah, it was Brooks, Corum, Green Bay, and Benson all went ahead of him. So he's at least
I know he went in like the 4th round, because I know that was kind of the big thing with, people were talking about like draft capital, especially with like Braylon Allen, because I think it was him and then Braylon Allen that went in the 4th.
Yep. Braylon Allen went at 434 because that's when the supplemental picks started getting added.
Yeah, so. There you go. But yeah, obviously we were talking about the top 3 because they had the best draft capital. But like I'm really starting to think that draft capital means less and less for running backs.
Yeah.
Simply because the way that the Rams took Blake Corum not to be a Kieran Williams replacement. It was to replace all the backup running backs because they have nothing behind their starter, right?
Yeah, they got tired of cycling in backups every week. They said, let's go get a real backup running back. So
exactly. The narrative with Trey Benson, at least the way that I was doing my projections, was this is a derivative of the Cleveland offense. Look at how they use Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. Benson can come in and play that Kareem Hunt role, so they would have more of a timeshare. Benson obviously has dealt with injuries, but James Conner has been so effective as a bell cow that they haven't needed trade.
Yep.
Right? Jonathan Brooks obviously not healthy, so that kind of goes out the window. But all these other guys were drafted into scenarios.
Oh, Jalen Wright. I was right. Jalen Wright went ahead of Irving.
That's right. Jalen Wright was traded up for in the 3rd round.
Yep.
Which he's another one, right? Rotational piece, but somebody that has the speed and everything else that Miami looks for in a running back. Devon Achane is not built to be a 20-some-odd touch guy in the NFL. How he's managed to do it this season to stay healthy, I have no idea. But it's been so much in the receiving game, right? Eventually, Jalen Wright will take over that, Raheem Mostert role probably next year, which we all said would probably be the case. But Bucky is in a backfield where Rachaad White can't run through the tackles. Braylon Allen is behind Breece Hall. So, yeah, I mean,
but you bring up the Jets would be dumb not to trade Breece Hall. Braylon Allen.
That's what I'm saying.
Braylon Allen could pop like crazy. We're not talking about. I'm just saying 5 rookie wide receivers, 5 rookie running backs, all in the top 50. Great season for rookies, I guess, is what I'm alluding to here, John.
No, I agree. And it really has been. It has.
And while I have been picking on the old people in my section, you want to give props to one old guy before we get out of here.
We've been getting so many start-sit questions around Keenan Allen, and it's baffling to me. It's the same thing I've said for weeks. Why are we putting Cortland Sutton in these start-sit questions? He's been a top 10 wide receiver since week 8. Keenan Allen is the wide receiver 8 in fantasy points per game since week 12, over 20 fantasy points per game. He has been on a heater the last month. Why are we doubting him? Like, I get it. We've seen the bad of Caleb Williams, but a quarterback can be bad and his wide receivers still be elite for fantasy.
Certainly in PPR.
Exactly my point. Like, Adam Thielen has popped off. He's 34 years old. Keenan Allen, 32 years old.
George immediately says, Adam Thielen still got it. So.
Yeah, right? Like, we're seeing it when they need to be. And Keenan Allen is a savvy veteran wide receiver. Look at Larry Fitzgerald in the twilight of his career. He moved into the slot, kept being a really good wide receiver. And yet we kept fading him because of his age. Keenan Allen, 32 years old, plays in the slot. Stop fading these guys.
Yeah.
Although I will say, he's a free agent next year, going to be 33. He's basically said, I'm either going to end up back in LA with the Chargers or I'm going to stay here in Chicago. So it's going to be one of those two spots. Are we going to fade him again if he ends up at one of those two spots? Because
my only concern with Allen,
ready to go.
My only concern with Allen is the weight gain this offseason as well. I want to see him take better care of himself this offseason, because if he comes in overweight again, I am going to probably fade him. So.
Yeah, I agree 100% on that one.
All right, guys, let's knock out some of these questions. I'll remind you, who was it? Austin, I'm getting to your quarterback section in the question in the very next section. So not ignoring your question. I know you've been waiting forever, but you're literally asking about the quarterback section of the show. Josh, do we trust Tyrone Tracy this week, or do we like Tyrone Tracy this week? I mentioned it was an ugly week for him last week. I think 27 rushing yards, but he had that really, really nice receiving touchdown. He gets the Colts, who are a so-so defense. I just don't think they're going to be able to lean on the run, so you're hoping for the passing work again. And if it's Tommy Cutlets, I'm not playing Tyrone Tracy.
Yeah. If it's Drew Lock, I feel better about it.
Yeah.
I mean, Tajay Spears had 10 carries for 27 yards. Now, I understand he's a very different back than Tyrone Tracy. But Tracy's running back share just on rush attempts has been down because they've been rotating Devin Singletary into the rotation a lot more. But Tyrone Tracy's passing down work over the last month has increased, which, again, we like to see if it's a PPR league. But, again, DeVito is so bad. He was a fun story last year. He's so bad. He's not a good quarterback. He belongs in the XFL. Let's be honest here. Again, like we've said, the Colts aren't a good defense by any means. They can certainly let up points, but the Giants' offense isn't built to score points.
Yeah. I will throw out Tracy dealing with his own ankle injury as well. So if you have
he's a low end RB2 for me. And if I find a better upside option, I'm more than willing to sit him.
Hilariously, Josh, he's my RB25. So I have him as my top RB3.
Bam!
So, yeah. George dealing with a case of the uglies in his family league. Garrett Wilson or Cooper Kupp? I think the answer is Jalen McMillan.
The answer is 100% Jalen McMillan. I don't care if you're starting Mike Evans also.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I have to go with one of them, I'm going to take Kupp just in a division matchup. But I don't love it.
I would do the same thing. Zay Flowers is dealing with a bit of an injury. LaPla wants to know, would we start Flowers if he's healthy or Khalil Shakir coming off of that terrible game last week?
Yeah, I think the Bills are going to pass more this week.
I think so.
I mean, I feel more confident in Flowers. I'll say that off the rip. But again, I mean, you're going to know on Flowers anyway because it's a Wednesday game. Shakir plays on Sunday.
Yeah, it's the short week for Flowers that has me worried as well. So I think I'm probably going to go Shakir in this situation.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, it's a really short week for the Ravens. Yeah. I mean, it's Saturday turnaround to Wednesday, which I guess is really no different than Sunday to Thursday. But I don't know. I just want the better player. Plain and simple. It's Flowers for me.
Yep. All right. I think Craig is just flexing on the world right now that he has the Falcons defense. I think his question got cut off in the middle. What I will say, Craig, is when I was doing my initial run of rankings, I understand the Falcons have been fucking hot lately. I'm not playing them against Washington, Josh. Plain and simple. I don't trust them that much.
No, well, look, Philly defense, one of the best in the NFL, and Washington managed 36 on them. So
yeah. So I don't know if that's where he was going with that, but I am not playing them against the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, I definitely got to go find a new defense myself. So.
Is it okay to start BTJ and JSN over Tyreek 100 times out of 100, my friend? You don't hesitate there one bit, especially in that Cleveland cold.
Yeah, it feels pretty asinine, but right now, Brian Thomas Jr. is a top 10 wide receiver. JSN's a top 10 wide receiver. At a certain point, you have to pivot off of the names.
Yep.
And I'm more than happy to do that. Plain and simple.
Yeah, I agree completely. Didn't quite understand Craig's question. I do understand it. When will we know about Hurts, or does he pivot to Herbert? Now, Herbert plays Saturday, I think we just talked about.
Yes. Yeah, they play the 1:00 game Saturday. Philly is 1:00 on Sunday.
So this is a tough situation, Josh. Would you just go to Herbert against New England? I don't love this matchup that much for Herbert. I think I'd wait out Hurts. I think I'd cut Herbert and get a Sunday player and wait out Hurts.
Well, I mean, it all depends on that Sunday player. I mean, I think this is a better question for the next section when we talk about the quarterback option, right? Like, so yeah, I mean, for me, all right, who are we looking at quarterback here? Go ahead and read
Okay.
it.
Hold on. Yeah, give us 2 seconds here, guys. Let me read this list off. So we're getting into Morse code. These are the final cheat codes of the season. These are the ones who are going to help you win your leagues, quite literally. When we do this section, the main focus is going to be here. Can we play these guys in week 17? So for my article, I went Bryce Young. The other names that I think matter are Michael Penix, Drake May, Anthony Richardson, and Caleb Williams, Josh. I think these are the last group of names that matter. So when we look for Sunday games from this group, I believe.
So Bryce Young is Sunday.
Penix is Sunday.
That's it.
Yeah, it is.
Because Caleb Williams is Thursday.
Yep.
Drake May is Saturday.
Yep.
So there's your question for Craig.
Okay.
Would you
go
Bryce
start with
Young
Craig there.
or A-Rich over Justin Herbert? Because I would not.
How did I rank him? I have Herbert ahead of the streaming options. I would also go Herbert. But the difference is it's not just that, though. It's that or wait out Jalen Hurts. And if my choice is...
I'm not doing that.
I am
championship week. I'm not doing that.
I'm
especially with concussions.
I am confident enough in Bryce Young to match Justin Herbert that I'll wait out Jalen Hurts. So me and Josh are disagreeing here. I would wait it out.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that.
I think it's fair. I think it's absolutely fair that you're not going to do it. But like I said, I want to start Hurts this week.
So. Yeah, I mean, look, I believe in my quarterback.
Hopefully we know on Friday.
Yeah, that's the thing. Hopefully we know on Friday. But honestly, if he gets cleared, it's probably not going to be until Saturday afternoon. And again, you're dealing with head injuries. You're dealing with a concussion. I've seen way too many people that you thought would play after the next week, and then they don't because something acts up. And as somebody who suffered head injuries myself, it's always up in the air. You never know. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to rely on that. Give me the safe option. Yes, it's not a great matchup for Herbert because he's going cross country. Patriots aren't a great defense right now. They have their moments, sure, but he can pick his spots and he can do what he needs to do against a bad team. Bryce Young, yeah, he's been on a hot streak lately. Tampa Bay defense you can throw on. Tampa Bay is also very good about getting in your face. How do you 100%. Beat Bryce Young, who's 5'11"? You get in his face up the middle, and that is the strength. That is the strength of Tampa's defensive line.
Yeah, with Vita Vea and the other guy, I can't think of his name right now.
So. Yeah, Diaby.
Yeah, there you go. All right, we have 2 questions about the same thing, Josh. So I'm just going to get these questions up on the screen to give these askers their credit, and then we really just need to break down this quarterback position because that's what they're asking us to do. Austin, a half an hour ago, asked Drake May, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Matt Stafford, or Bryce Young. And then Caesar chimes in with almost the exact same list. Stafford, Stroud, Caleb, May, or Young. So the first thing I want to get into, Josh, and I think we both now agree on this. I have Justin Herbert ahead of my whole streaming list, and you like Herbert as well. So for Austin, the answer is Justin Herbert, and we're not worried about the streaming options.
Correct.
For Caesar, it's all the streaming options. So I'm going to explain to you, Josh, why I put Bryce Young as my number 1, but then you have interesting points for 2 guys on this list as well. So I went with Young because he is the safe option. We are dealing 8 consecutive games with a touchdown pass, and now 3 out of his last 4 games with a rushing touchdown. The yardage is not there for Bryce Young. However, the last time he faced Tampa Bay, he did go for 298 yards. I am not playing Bryce Young as a ceiling play. I am playing Bryce Young as a don't lose me this game play. I think he is safe for about 250 yards, which is 10 fantasy points, and 2 touchdowns, which gets us up to 22 fantasy points if you're playing in a 6. I think he's probably going to give 2 of those points back in a turnover. I think Bryce Young is 20 points, Josh. His floor is probably 15, but his ceiling is only 20. This is not a ceiling play for me.
Yeah, I think Young is kind of that 18 to 22 range. That's exactly where I would put him. Keep in mind, too, yes, he went for 298 last time Tampa played. Tampa's defensive line was not healthy.
Yeah, that's a good point.
At that time either, and they are now. So you're getting a different Tampa line against Bryce Young in this Panthers offense. So that's the first thing. For me, I'm going Caleb here because, and this is what we talked about pre-show, With Caleb, we've seen the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and then, infant toddler temper tantrum, right?
Yeah.
Like we've seen every edge of the spectrum. We've seen 150 and 3 turnovers with no touchdowns. We've seen 303 touchdowns. And then we've seen the 250 and 2 touchdowns, which is that middle ground where you can get Bryce Young. Is he the most volatile option on this particular list? Probably.
Yep.
100%. Probably.
And then there's
Seattle,
one more name that's not on this list that we do need to talk about.
Yeah. Seattle has been so-so against quarterbacks. Since week 13, they allow 17.6 fantasy points, 5 touchdown passes in 4 games, about 230 yards. That kind of goes with what I was just talking about. 250, 2 touchdowns, pretty safe bet, right? Caleb Williams has Keenan Allen to throw to.
Yep.
And this guy's been an absolute heater lately. The way that they're moving him around, finding the zones, the way that they're scheming plays open for DJ Moore. And then, oh, by the way, you have Rome Odunze to deal with. Okay. The thing is that they don't have an effective running game. So this all falls on Caleb Williams. They need to show some level of life to really get going. But the thing that I like most here, Caleb Williams doesn't have an interception over the last 4 games.
Yeah, he's been protecting the ball finally.
Okay. 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions over this last 4-game stretch. He's the QB 11 since week 13. And he's added basically 25 rushing yards per game. So you talk about Bryce Young's like floor when it comes to rushing. Caleb's offering that too. He's just not scoring rushing touchdowns.
Yeah.
Like he's scrambling when he needs to. The game is starting to come to him a little bit more. And we've seen the upside with him that really for the first time since, this past week, we saw it with Bryce Young. We haven't really seen this season.
Yeah.
So that's why for me, I'm going Caleb here.
I want to throw one more name into this list because he's probably the most interesting of all of these guys. He's not on this list. Anthony Richardson has been Anthony Richardson. And this week he gets the Giants, Josh. So while the player is terrifying, the matchup makes him a part of this list. Because I do think for me and you, the best 3 streaming options come down to Bryce, Richardson, and Williams this week. So,
yeah, I do like Drake May a little bit, only because I don't trust the Chargers defense. May has been really good on the ground. And hey, he started finding Kayshon Boutte, but the other problem is he doesn't have any other reliable receiving options. So
yeah, I actually love the Chargers defense.
For me.
So
okay, fair enough.
They're my number 1 defense this week. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
But no, Anthony Richardson, dude completed 7 passes.
So how are we talking
again,
about him?
Not a great. I mean, it was a solid percentage because he only threw 11, but they leaned on the running game, and he had 9 carries for 70 yards and a touchdown. Right. If there's one way to beat the Giants, it's on the ground.
Yeah.
Because losing Dexter Lawrence, their run defense went with him.
Yep.
And Jonathan Taylor just ran for 218 yards and 3 touchdowns.
He's tired.
He's tired, right? Now you got to get the ball to A-Rich. So I think probably of all of these guys, A-Rich might have the safest floor because of the rushing.
Yeah.
But do you really want to rely on Anthony Richardson in championship week? Because I
not at all. He is my last resort. Playing it so.
And I want to point this out. He did score 20 fantasy points last week. Great number. QB 15.
Yep. Going back to whoever it was though, who might lose Jalen Hurts, I am going to start Richardson as their second quarterback over Tua Tagovailoa just for the upside. Plain and simple. So. Caesar, yes, you're playing Baker Mayfield. He does not belong in any of these conversations, so don't worry about that whatsoever. Josh, let's wrap up the quarterbacks there. We don't have a ton of questions. The next kind of comment is about running backs, so let's get into the running back section. In the article, I talked about Audric Estime and Gus Edwards. If you want to know why I like them as my best 2, tune in to the probably 5-minute mark of the show. That's all we talked about was why I picked those 2. However, the names I think we need to talk about, and we talked a lot about these earlier, so Josh, I'll just kind of give you free reign to talk about some of them. Jerome Ford needs to be mentioned. He does not meet the 50% criteria. If he's available, the answer is Jerome Ford. Tyjae Spears, Madison or Abdullah, they get the New Orleans Saints. Trey Benson, because of the injury with Connor, but it may not even be his backfield. Kendry Miller sucked last night, gets the Raiders this week. Patrick Taylor sucked this week, but if Garendo's out, he gets the Detroit Lions. So, Josh, you've kind of talked about a few of these guys already. You definitely need to go in on Kendry Miller, but like Tyjae Spears seems like the must start here just because of the touchdown upside, as we mentioned earlier in the show.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be. I mean, 4 touchdowns in 2 weeks. We talked a little bit about the inefficiency on the ground. He's been so much more involved in the passing game, but he feels very game script dependent as a result of that. Tennessee plays
It's on the notes. It's right next to his name.
Jaguars. Yeah.
Yep.
You can beat the Jags, plain and simple.
100%.
I mean, you can beat the Jags. That defense is god awful. Yeah, he has to be. I mean, I don't really have any other analysis outside of that, in all honesty.
So let's just talk about Kendry Miller, Josh. Obviously he's the starter, but they threw to Jordan Mims, I think 8 times last night. So is the role enough against this bad defense in the Raiders? Is the role enough to consider Kendry Miller this week?
So this is what I found interesting. Since week 13, the Raiders actually fairly middle of the road against running backs.
They've come on as a defense.
Points. Yeah.
12th
fewest fantasy points allowed per game to running backs. They allow 110 yards on the ground to running backs per game, though.
Woo.
So this to me screams Kendry Miller. But the problem is that I think with Spencer Rattler at quarterback, or really anybody outside of Derek Carr at quarterback,
can't trust
the Raiders offense is better than the Saints offense. And that alone turns the tides more towards Mims versus Kendry Miller.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't seem that they're using Miller in that receiving role. He did have, I believe, 2 catches.
Like that.
Monday night. He had 8 carries, solid. So, like, I think he can do it on the ground, like, but I don't think he sees more than 10, maybe 12 carries.
Not a lot of opportunity.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think there's going to be a ton of opportunities. Like, they're so depleted all across the board that I don't want to fall for this again.
Yeah.
Like, I fell for it against Green Bay. That bit me in the ass. I don't want to fall for it in championship week. So, like, I'm only playing Kendry Miller out of absolute desperation.
And I wanted to throw out, we didn't talk a ton about him, but you bring up Trey Benson obviously dealing with his own injuries. The Cardinals get the Rams. We don't think James Conner is going to play. You think there might be a sneaky running back here along the lines of Jordan Mims?
Yeah, I mean, Michael Carter could be a guy. Could be. I mean, I think he's worth a flyer.
Yeah.
The Rams have been stout. Like, we talked all the time, like, you could run against them because their linebacker core is so bad. But their defensive line has been
good.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
And since week 13, they're allowing the 4th fewest fantasy points to running backs. But they can be had through the air. On average per game since week 13, 5 receptions for 35 yards. So that is a really solid receiving floor in PPR leagues for running backs.
Yeah.
We've seen Michael Carter do this quite a bit going back to his Jets days.
Yep.
Did okay in the passing game this past week as well. So I think if Benson doesn't play, Carter is ultimately going to be the guy because I don't think they trot out James Conner. So now you're talking about a guy that basically could end up seeing 20 touches because who else are they going to get the ball? Because we know they're not throwing touchdowns to Trey McBride.
Yeah.
And Marvin Harrison can't get open. So could be a guy to pay attention to if Trey Benson is out again.
Yeah. Josh, we have 2 users who are concerned about running backs. I do want to end this with a question, so we're not going to go into questions yet, Josh. Don't change the timesheet yet. So I want to ask you my question first. If they come off of the IR this week with your championship on the line, would you play J.K. Dobbins or Austin Eckler?
Eckler, potentially. And the reason I say that is because Brian Robinson just fumbled twice.
Yeah. And he's banged.
And we saw them get Chris Rodriguez very involved very quickly after that.
Yeah.
Washington plays the Falcons.
Yeah.
That I think is how you beat them, is more in the receiving game anyway. So I would be interested in Eckler. Dobbins, I feel like if he is playing, you have to play him against the Patriots.
Against that Patriots defense.
You can run all over them.
Yep.
Again, I don't love it. But, I mean, if you made it this far without Dobbins, dial them up, baby.
Yeah, it depends on who your options are, but I think they're decent RB2s. Josh, Austin and Craig are both worried about the running backs in the Baltimore-Houston game. So Austin said he's worried about Henry, and Craig wants to know if we think Mixon will rebound this week against the Ravens. They're playing one another. I want to start with Austin. I'm not worried about Derrick Henry. Like, it doesn't bother me. Plus, Derrick Henry fucking eats the Texans. So
yeah. Steelers also have a pretty good run defense.
Yeah.
What did Derrick Henry do against them?
Whatever he wanted, it seemed.
Exactly. I think he had 130 yards. Derrick Henry traditionally runs all over the Texans. Again, traditionally, they are a very different team than when he played them. So yeah, I wouldn't say I'm worried.
I think people are most worried about the touchdown drought. He hasn't scored a touchdown since week 11.
And you know what? And that is 100% fair. And I get that. And it's not like he's lighting it up in the receiving game to help buoy your fantasy game.
Yeah.
I would probably put him more as like a low end one just because of the dearth of touchdowns that he scored lately.
Yeah.
But CJ Stroud is a mess right now.
Yep.
That offense took another hit losing Tank Dell. Robert Woods has done nothing. He's not going to be a guy that's going to make or break a defense and be like, oh my God, I'm so scared of Robert Woods, right? This defense is going to shift all of its coverage to Nico Collins. Joe Mixon's going to get more involved in the passing game. Dalton Schultz is going to be more involved in the passing game. That's the biggest reason why I like Mixon this week. I trust him more than last week. Like I was down on Mixon last week, 8.1 fantasy points. Yeah. 2 weeks ago, another dud, right? This stretch of games has not been great for Mixon. And we talked about this earlier in the year, heading into literally this stretch. Mixon will struggle. The running game in and of itself has struggled in Houston, and they haven't been able to make up for it because of the passing game, right? It just hasn't been there. Austin points out, is Nico still a must start? Yeah, you have to start Nico Collins, plain and simple. Yeah. Like, I would not. To me, the biggest question mark when it comes to wide receivers this week is going to be Jalen McMillan, right? Would you start Jalen McMillan over Nico Collins? Because I certainly wouldn't, because the ceiling for Nico is just so exponentially higher, regardless of the matchup, because he's just that much more talented, right?
Yeah.
I think, again, unless it's like a shallow league where you still have like a top 15 option that you're trying to fit into like a fourth spot, like this would be the time, you can move him above Nico, sure, because you don't trust the matchup. The environment has obviously changed. But we're talking about running backs, and I'm not really, again, Henry, you're still starting. Mixon,
I think I'm still starting.
I think maybe I might still start him, but again, I think there might be some better options because the running back pool is a little more shallow.
I'll throw some names at you. Well, actually, it's just one name, Josh, that you wouldn't think to start over Mixon that I would right now is Chuba Hubbard. I have Mixon as my RB 11
I would
early
start
on.
Chuba Hubbard over Joe Mixon any day of the week.
Okay, I was gonna say, but that's not how the average fantasy person is thinking right now.
Yeah, because they know Joe Mixon's name, they don't know Chuba Hubbard's name.
But like Bucky Irving against Carolina, I think
I
you got to start him. I think you got to start him over Mixon. Aaron Jones revenge game against Green Bay.
Aaron Jones saw 95% of the touches in the running back room. Fuck yeah, I'm starting Aaron Jones over Joe Mixon.
He's getting all the work right now. Rico Dowdle against Philly. I think I'm starting Mixon in that situation.
That I would start Mixon, yeah.
Yeah. So it's certainly a worthwhile question. It's just I'm probably playing him as a solid RB2. Jim Lord Israel's been waiting for 15 minutes for a defense question. We got the Miami D taking on Cleveland, the Denver D taking on the Cincinnati Bengals, Josh. And this is kind of where my line is. I'm going to play some of those great streaming options over the Denver D this week. And the Miami D falls into that against this Cleveland offense. I will start Miami this week over Denver, even though Denver's why you're in the championship.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Miami a little bit earlier. Like it's still not great because they're just not an opportunistic defense. But this is a game where they can pile up sacks because DTR is just not good.
Yeah.
I think the biggest detriment is that DTR is a pretty mobile guy, so he should be able, in theory, to escape some of that pressure. But he's also a young, not great quarterback, and he's going to create turnovers just because he's bad. So that is going to lend itself to some upside for Miami's defense.
Absolutely. Killer Kev, another one, Miami or the Chargers. And Josh, we may disagree here because I know you weren't loving the Chargers are my favorite defense this week against New England. I'm going to go with the Chargers this week. They're my number one defense. I see the appeal of Miami. Josh, I'm interested to know, would you go the Dolphins here if they were on your team?
I think the Chargers have been a better fantasy defense. But you can pass on them.
Certainly can.
That's the biggest thing. You can pass on them. And Drake May's actually looked really good as a passer. With how bad the Patriots offensive line has been, I do think that Bosa and Khalil Mack get home this week. So that's definitely going to put Drake May on the move. I think I might still lean Miami here.
Yeah, that's fair. Caesar.
You missed the second part of that question.
Oh, I forgot. It's a lump of coal. You cannot trust Travis Kelce.
You're not trusting Travis Kelce. If you made it to the championship with Travis Kelce on your roster, it was in spite of Travis Kelce.
Only one of my Kelce teams made it to the championship. So
also in spite of Travis Kelce.
Yeah, and it's a dynasty team. As I mentioned, the only reason I won, Green Bay defense. So Josh, Caesar picked up Kayshon Boutte to play over possibly B-Rob or Dowdle. Should he drop him for Carter? I'm not going that far. Even though you're blocking the Connor manager, Carter's not a must start by any stretch. I'm going to hang on to Boutte here.
Yeah, I'd probably hang on to Boutte as well. I mean, I'm not rushing to start Boutte.
I was just going to say the same thing. That was my next question, Josh. I don't think I'm starting him over either one of these guys, even with the recent hangups of Brian Robinson Jr.
Yeah, I would still go B-Rob here. But I would put B-Rob and Dowdle firmly above Kayshon Boutte this week. Again, one good game. I'm not ready to be like, oh, he's their go-to guy. I've fallen for that trap before.
Juju Smith-Schuster is both lucky and happy to have a job right now. I don't think he has a revenge game on the mind there, young native. So no, we're not bought into a Juju Smith-Schuster revenge game at all. Stay far.
Juju ran like 20% of the routes.
Yeah.
He's not involved in this offense right now. He might get a cheap touchdown because that's a Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid thing. But it'll be one catch for 8 yards and a touchdown. That's going to be his quote revenge.
Quincy's in the championship against the number one seed. The number one seed is on an 8-game winning streak. Quincy is on a 7-game winning streak, and his last loss was never mind. I thought he lost to this guy by 1, but he's the 6th seed, and he's only projected to lose by 1. You love that. So obviously you both got hot at the exact right time. That's how you win a fantasy championship. He has Barkley, Gibbs. Wait, the opponent has Barkley. Quincy has Gibbs. Opponent has Jacobs. Quincy has Kyron. Opponent has Puka and Cup. Quincy has Debo and Jennings. Ugh. It went from real pretty at running back to real ugly at wide receiver. He has Hawk, Hunter Henry. He has Daniels. The other guy has Goff. This is fun other than the running back. Or other than the wide receiver.
Wide receivers, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Quincy, I don't think I'm starting Debo and Jennings. I don't know who's out there, but actually, let's get into it because that's the next section of the show. Let's talk about these wide receivers, Josh. So in my article, I mentioned Jalen McMillan and Kayshon Boutte. McMillan is by far the favorite because of what he brings to the offense. Josh, the names I think people should be aware of, and it is a short list for championship week, and you're going to pour water on one of them right away. Marquise Hollywood Brown, Marvin Mims, Olamide Zaccheaus, Rashad Bateman, the Panthers wide receivers, Adam Thielen, though he is only out there in 40% of leagues, Jalen Coker, David Moore, mainly because they get Tampa Bay, and Wan'Dale Robinson gets the Colts, Josh. He's been heavily involved. So you actually come right out here and said, if I remember your notes correctly, there's only one guy you're considering starting from this list. So,
yeah, I mean, outside of Jalen McMillan, the only one that I like is Zaccheaus.
Yeah, super interesting.
It's not even, yeah. And I mean, again, he scored 2 touchdowns against Philly. First off, a Philly defense is not easy to score on, and he did it twice. And Jaden Daniels did it 5 times. Regardless of that, you can talk the revenge game narrative, right? Zaccheaus once played with Philly last year, 2 touchdowns. Used to play with Atlanta. He gets them this week, right? We want to play this game? Okay, cool. So
yeah, Olamide
Zaccheaus
takes revenge games seriously.
Yeah, right. We've needed this since Steve Smith, baby.
Exactly.
Zaccheaus has 12 targets over his last 2 games. This has all coincided with Noah Brown being out. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Last 2 games with Brown out, 12.9% target share, 20.5% target share in those 2 games. Jaden Daniels is looking that way because defenses are covering Terry McLaurin. He needs a solid second option. Excuse me. I think that there's flex appeal here, but of this list that you have named, it's McMillan, it's Zacchaeus, and it's everybody else.
I'll throw Kayshon Boutte on there. I think he could be interesting against the Chargers.
Again, I'm like, I get it, and that's fine because he finally did something with all those routes that he's running. They're just spreading the ball around so much that I don't want to trust any of these Patriots wide receivers.
Well, let's make this personal, Josh. Let's go back to Quincy. Would you start Debo over Kayshon Boutte?
I would start Boutte over Debo only because this is what Debo does. He'll have 1 game and then disappears for 6.
There you go. Because I know you like Jennings, and I need to dig a little bit more into Jennings.
He's the one that's getting the targets. It's not even so much that I like Jennings because I just mean you like
his role right now.
Offense. Yeah, I like his role. Yeah.
No, I think that's
But he's showing why he's not an actual number 1 wide receiver at this point.
So, yeah, the thing I wanted to note for everybody, and Josh, you've kind of talked about this already. I'm going to give you a chance to pour a little bit of last water on Marquise Hollywood-Brown before we move on. But the thing I wanted to note to everybody, what's
Plenty
that?
Of practice. I said I've been doing this for years. Plenty of practice.
Is wide receiver waivers have been hot all season. They got very fucking cold in week 17. There are not a lot of guys I would trust. Marvin Mims has gotten hot recently, gets a very bad defense. Still don't know if I trust him. Rashad Bateman against Houston is interesting. He was really hot, obviously dealt with the injury, came back a little bit colder. Does he get more involved this week, especially Josh, if Zay Flowers ends up missing? I think Bateman becomes more interesting. Of the trio in Carolina, Thielen's the only one I'm starting, and I don't love Wan'Dale Robinson. A lot of people, Josh, are going to see Hollywood Brown and think wide receiver 1, he's on waivers. You are not in on Hollywood Brown, certainly on this extremely short week.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier in the show.
Yeah, we had a question about
the moment that they, acquired DeAndre Hopkins. We all thought, oh, this is going to be great. I think he had 1 game with 2 touchdowns, like 3 receptions, something like that. But the route participation, the involvement in the offense was very minimal. So it became, how can you trust this? Because we're all like, oh, it's DeAndre Hopkins. It's Patrick Mahomes. Of course you start him, blah, blah, blah. No, you don't. It's the same thing with Amari Cooper. Everybody's like, yeah, let's start Amari Cooper because he's got Josh Allen. Amari Cooper ain't done shit.
Start Amari Cooper. Yep.
Stop falling for these narratives because these guys have done something for you 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't care what Hollywood Brown did in 2020 with Lamar Jackson. Like, it does not matter to me.
Yeah.
Hard pass. 33% route participation in his first game back.
There you go.
It's going to grow, sure, but it's not going to get that much better to a point where he's going to see 7 catches for 100 yards. Like, Patrick Mahomes hasn't been a good quarterback.
And Josh and I both talked about, we do not like this game this week. So
yeah, this is going to be a very ugly game.
Yeah. Patrick Mahomes is pissed they're playing on Christmas. Let's not forget that either. So
yeah, I don't blame him. Christmas is an NBA day. It's not an NFL day.
Yeah.
This is what bugs me with the NFL.
It's weird. Lamar Jackson just wants to see a Beyonce concert. That's all he's worried about. So
pretty much, yeah.
Extended Mags, new face over on Twitch. Welcome to the show. New here, needs help. 2 flex, 1 wide receiver. Liam Hopkins, QJ Dobbs, Keon Coleman. So right away, obviously, we're starting CeeDee Lamb. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. He is dealing with an injury, so you'll have to monitor it. But we're starting CeeDee Lamb. Josh, who are the next 3 we are starting from this list? Because yuck.
Probably QJ.
I was thinking the same.
Because of the matchup. Although I am kind of curious if he's going to see mostly Christian Gonzalez because I don't think anybody else.
Yeah,
the way they've been using Josh Palmer makes me think that Palmer might be.
They could at least see a switch off. Yeah.
But I think that definitely limits his upside. But what I do like is that they do look for QJ in the end zone. Probably Dobbs.
That's kind of where I would go with this. I'm not starting Keon Coleman in my championship, plain and simple.
Yeah. I mean, they're taking like 1-2 shots with him a week. Like, it just doesn't, it's not near enough to feel confident about.
So Extended Mags, we literally just finished our wide receiver section. Our favorite is Jalen McMillan. If he is out there, go get Jalen McMillan. We don't mind Kayshon Boutte, but a name that I know is out there in your league right now that we would start over all of these guys except for CeeDee Lamb is Olamide Zacchaeus from the Washington Commanders. He is playing the Atlanta Falcons. He is the set number 2 wide receiver on a team that is going to throw touchdown passes. Go get Olamide Zaccheaus, and I think Rashad Bateman is worth a watch as well, just because of the injury situation in Baltimore.
I mean, that's fair. Just keep in mind with Zaccheaus, pay attention to Noah Brown. If he's still out, then yes.
He is. He went to IR, I think.
Oh, perfect.
When I did my rankings this week, Josh, he went to out immediately. And usually that means they are on season-ending IR. I'm going to double check right now.
Perfect.
Yeah, so he's listed as out on Fantasy Pros. He has serious internal injuries and was set to miss the rest of the season. So,
there you go.
Yeah,
dial up Zaccheaus.
Yep. So Olamide Zaccheaus it is. Austin says he's hoping Zach Charbonnet can get the backfield to himself this week because Monty is going to be out. That's a tough situation.
Not going to happen with Kenneth Walker healthy.
I was just going to say, because Walker, I don't think is hurt. So
no, Walker came back this week and 16-3 touches.
And was getting a lot of passing game work. So
yep.
If not, he has to rely on Josh's favorite running back in the world, Rachaad White.
Well, look, it may not be my favorite running back, but he's getting run.
So much passing game work.
Honestly, right now, Rachaad White is a much better option than Zach.
Caught 7 balls last week, didn't he?
They use him very much in the passing game. Carolina, you can absolutely run on. They've been better of late, but you can run on them. And Rachaad White is so involved in the passing game that it doesn't matter.
Yep. Moving on to the tight ends, I covered Chigoziem Okonkwo in the article. It's all about the matchup with Chiggy. However, Josh, Houston dealing with their own injuries at wide receiver. Dalton Schultz is out there in a bunch of leagues. Isaiah Likely is interesting if Zay Flowers misses time. Brenton Strange still deserves a little bit of play. 1 dud. And then Tyler Higbee only catches 1 ball, Josh, but it's for a touchdown. I don't think he's playable this week. I'm probably going with Chig out of this entire group no matter what. What are your thoughts on Schultz and Brenton Strange this week?
Schultz, to me, tops this list. Just because we know exactly what we get from him week in and week out. Steady, he's reliable. He steps up when the team needs him. They're down to basically Nico and Mixon in this offense. That's how Schultz operates best. When he's like a 2 or 3 option, that's when he shines. Stroud has no issue looking his way. I think he has a pretty safe floor. And then he has the upside because he can come in and catch touchdowns. Like he can be that red zone option, right? Strange, it's a decent matchup. But Tennessee's defense is pretty hot or cold, in all honesty. I mean, they gave up, 36 to the Colts, so maybe they're hot this week because they were bad last week.
Yeah.
I probably would go Schultz and Likely and then Okonkwo over Strange at this point.
Okay.
Likely, like you said, Flowers injury. Bateman's
Opens
coming back
things
from the injury. I think he only had 1 catch last week. Happened to be a touchdown. Likely also caught a touchdown. But they've never hesitated to pivot more towards 12 personnel and run Andrews and Likely at the same time when they're down wide receivers. So I think that is 100% going to open up some opportunities for Isaiah Likely this week.
Quincy actually has a tight end question for us. Kraft, Hawk, or Strange? I'm still just going to lead on the slow and steady, safe TJ Hawkinson here, Josh. I think 68 yards last week. I'm not worried about.
No, he had way less than that, unless he had a fumble, because he only had 4 fantasy points.
Oh my goodness, I'm getting him confused with someone else. You're right. He only went 2 for 27 last week. I don't know who I'm confusing him with. Jake Ferguson, I think.
I will say that the Vikings are going to have to throw the football this week against the Packers. Like, this is a prime matchup. This is going to be a back and forth. I would much prefer Hawkinson this week. Kraft has been very involved, which I like. But again, he feels a lot more hot and cold than TJ Hawkinson.
Yeah. Guys, that's all we really have to say about the tight ends. It's a shitty position. Sorry if you have to stream this week, but there are some decent options out there. Josh Quincy also has a question for you. Start 2 wide receivers in a flex. He's got those 2 San Francisco wide receivers, but he does have Adam Thielen, Jalen McMillan, Jalen Waddle, Jerome Ford, Patrick Taylor, and Kendry Miller. Josh, I'm probably going to go Jennings and McMillan. I'm actually going to go Jennings, Thielen, McMillan as my 3 players off of this list. Ford, I could make an argument for.
Yeah, I was going to say I would go Thielen, McMillan, and Ford. Like I said, we talked about this earlier. I don't love Ford's matchup, but I the volume is 100% going to be there.
Yeah, you got to take that guaranteed volume these running backs are getting, and nobody's taking anything away from him in Cleveland. So yeah, I'll switch then. Yeah, Thielen, McMillan, Ford. Thielen, McMillan, you get to watch play each other, and I think that's going to be a fun game this week. So
dude out, baby.
Yeah, Thielen, McMillan, Ford. Guys, when it comes to the defenses, I normally have to tell you it's only for 1 week, but there's only one fucking week left. So these are the 6 defenses out there in 50% of leagues that I would consider rostering. As I've mentioned numerous times throughout the show, the Los Angeles Chargers are actually my number 1 defense this week. Guys, I'm going to knock out stream of the week early this week. I can tell you right now, you've already heard all 3 of my stream of the week options. My options are going to be Bryce Young, Chigoziem Okonkwo, in the Los Angeles Chargers defense. I have to do it early because of Christmas Day.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, exactly. So tune in tonight to hear more reasoning behind it. But the Los Angeles Chargers against the New England Patriots, I'm going with. The Cardinals against the Rams. The Cardinals have played good defense in spite of their offense. I think the Rams, as I've mentioned, Father Time has caught up with them. I think this is going to be an ugly game on offense. I think the Cardinals are a good play. Dolphins get to go to Cleveland and take on DTR. I think that's a great matchup. Commanders against Atlanta. While I said I'm not playing Atlanta on the other side of this, Michael Penix didn't show a whole lot last week. Obviously, the 1 turnover wasn't his fault. I think the Commanders can get after this kid and force some turnovers. Colts get the Giants. Obviously, they're a great play. Seahawks at Chicago was a little bit of an iffy pick for me. Chicago's defense has taken a negative turn. Seattle's has still played well enough. I don't know. I'm close to removing them from this list. So they are the sketchiest of all of my picks this week. Chargers, Cardinals, Dolphins, Commanders, Colts. Those are the top 5 and the 5 you want to look for. Those will be on the stream of the week list. Josh, let's talk about what we're watching for in week 17. If there's any questions that come in, we'll get to those before we end the show. This was my list this week. Josh, tell me if you find any of this interesting. Vikings versus Packers. I always like these games where you have highly rated fantasy defenses against somewhat good offenses. So will offense or defense win the day? How many points scored in Denver versus Cincinnati? This is a game I'm looking forward to. Obviously, the Denver defense has been good, but the Cincinnati defense is not. I think Joe Burrow versus Bo Nix might be a very underrated matchup. Can the Steelers get after Patrick Mahomes? Obviously, he did not look like he was suffering any ill effects from that mid-ankle sprain. 39 rushing yards last week, maybe more than that, but had I think a touchdown. Regardless, good Patrick Mahomes last week. Can the Steelers' traditionally good defense get after that? Josh, this one was for you because I just thought it was hilarious. It's Deontay Johnson revenge week already. Baltimore versus Houston.
I honestly don't think he plays on a short week.
I don't think so either, but I just had to throw it in there. Does Detroit blow out the 49ers, Josh? All of my very smart best ball friends, when we were doing their week 17 correlation, they could not wait for this game. I don't think this was the game they were expecting, when now all of a sudden Detroit just looks like an infinitely better team than the San Francisco 49ers. Which Bills defense shows up against the New York Jets? The Bills have been very good and very bad in recent weeks. Can they get after Aaron Rodgers in a struggling Jets offense? Can the Chargers handle the cold weather in New England? Can the Dolphins handle the cold weather in Cleveland? Can the Panthers spoil another season for the second week in a row and beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and knock them potentially out of the division lead? I think that would be very, very interesting and ruin the season for the Tampa Bay Bucs. Is New Orleans versus Las Vegas as bad as it looks on paper? Are we going to be forced
Spoiler
to watch?
alert, yes.
Yeah. Are we going to be forced to watch Cooper Rush versus Kenny Pickett?
Please,
I don't think this is what anybody expected from this game at the beginning of the season. And then, Josh, I found these two interesting. How many rushing touchdowns in Colts versus the Giants? And how many interceptions thrown in Tennessee versus Jacksonville?
I'll throw some predictions on those last two. 4 rushing touchdowns for the Colts.
Okay.
4 combined interceptions.
All right. I like it. 4 and 4. So
kind of want to come back to this on the recap Wednesday.
Yeah, we'll have to pay attention to that.
4.
But yeah, those are the interesting ones, Josh. Those are the things. Do you think, let me just ask the question that I think a lot of people are wondering. Do you think the cold weather is going to affect either of these warm weather teams? You were pretty positive that you think Tua Tagovailoa can handle what's going to happen in Cleveland. So
yeah, I mean, unless it's a literal blizzard like we saw in the earlier this year, I think it's going to be fine. Like the cold, I don't think really hampers them. It would be the weather, elements, right? Yeah. It's muddy, it's rainy, it's snowing, whatever it may be. That I think is what gets to them. But they haven't dominated on the ground. The Dolphins haven't, the way that they did last year. And that is what, in my opinion, has really flipped this offense this year. Raheem Mostert obviously hasn't been what he was. Devon Achane has been great, but it's all been in the passing game. It hasn't really been on the ground.
Yeah.
That's the element that this team has been missing this year. Tua has been able to sling it. He's looked great since he came back from the concussion. Cleveland really doesn't worry me because, again, their offense is so bad.
So bad.
It was different when Jameis could sling it, right? When
Yeah.
Jameis could sling it, it gave the offense a chance. That breathed life into the defense. DTR does not breathe life into a defense because he puts them in short fields, turns the ball over, can't move the football. That's a problem against what is a traditionally high-powered offense in Miami.
All right, let's start with these last 2 questions, Josh. Extended Mag says he's getting an error that he's reached the league's limit.
That is an unfortunate league setting.
Yeah, so my only thing is, though, do they mean you have too many wide receivers? Because if that's what they mean, cut Keon Coleman to get Olamide Zaccheaus. We said we would not start Coleman in any situation. So if that's all it means is you have too many wide receivers, cut one of your wide receivers to go get Zaccheaus. And then his final question, and the final question of the show, Josh, Kansas City Chiefs on the Christmas Day game that they are not looking forward to play, or your Philadelphia Eagles defense?
Yeah, it's going to sound really biased, but I think I'd still go with the Eagles.
I go the Eagles by far.
Okay. I don't think the pass defense is going to be as bad. Keep in mind, too, CJ Gardner-Johnson got ejected for some couple of bogus taunting penalties in the middle of this game. He's kind of been the enforcer back there at safety, which has helped the corners. Reed Blankenship plays a lot more as kind of like a line, third linebacker in this defense, whereas Gardner-Johnson helps out the corners on that back end. So I think that you're getting him back in place is going to keep the corners more honest. Not saying that CeeDee Lamb is going to go off or not go off or whatever, but it's going to keep Cooper Rush in check. And then, of course, the Cowboys' offensive line being as banged up as they are, that's going to lend itself to the Eagles' pass rush. Nolan Smith has looked a lot better. Josh Sweat got home quite a bit this week. And that was against a pretty mobile Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
Cooper Rush is not running.
Nope.
Like, he'll be rushed to throw the football, no pun intended, but he can take sacks is basically what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
so
I agree completely.
I trust the Eagles a lot more.
Eagles are my number 5 defense this week. I don't care who the Eagles quarterback is. I think they are going to cause havoc for the Dallas Cowboys. So yeah, I'm definitely going with the Eagles in that matchup. All right, guys, that's going to be the end of the show. I hope your waivers go well. Let's talk about programming a little bit. All of our Wednesday shows are happening tonight. And what I mean by that is Cleat Dreams is going to go off at 8 o'clock tonight. Gator J is going to fill in as the host. And then Josh and I are going to be right back here to do this one more time for no pun intended. You're going to get the same show that you get every week with our upsides, our downsides, and my stream of the week. That's going to take place at 9 p.m. tonight. You are then not going to see Club Fantasy back on your airwaves until Saturday morning for Start Sit Different Day. So if you guys have any Start Sit questions, oh man, it's still not letting him do his transaction. I'm sorry. If you
you might have to talk to your league commissioner about that one and understand it with the league settings.
There's something weird going on.
Like that. That's like I said, I've been in some leagues where leagues will limit how many waiver transactions you can make in a given year. Sometimes it will have limits on, like, you can only roster up to 5 wide receivers or up to 6 wide receivers or running backs or whatever it may be. Like,
it sounds like this one's a straight up transaction limit. So
yeah, it seems like there's a limit on transactions here, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like Zaccheaus is a change the world type player. We just like him better than what you have, but it happens. But as I mentioned, this will be the last time you guys, or tonight at 9 will be the last time you guys see us on air until Saturday morning. Start Sit Different Day from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern. All we are going to do is answer your Start Sit questions. Look, good luck on waivers. Good luck in your fantasy championship. Merry Christmas, and we will see you guys in about, 9 hours to do no pun intended. Have a great day, guys. Good luck on those waivers.